So today I want to talk about doing research through our ASU library. Um, Refer back to assignment sheet number 2 to see the types of sources you need. This is a minimum, so remember you need 8 sources. These sources need to be 1 book, 2 newspaper magazine articles, those are slashes, 3 scholarly journal articles, and 2 valid internet sources. As I go through showing you the library, I want to show you how to find each one. So let's start off by looking for the 1 book. So at your ASU library homepage, live.asu.edu, I'm going to go to books, right? Now, with you guys being in an online classroom environment, you might not be able to access, or you might not have access to campus to find a book. So I'm going to give you a couple of different options. ASU has ebook collections, so you can definitely look and read one of those. If you're not close to campus or don't plan on going to campus probably in the next couple of days, I would suggest maybe finding a local library by you if you can't find an ebook. But let's start by trying to find ebooks. You can always, if you're close to campus, find a physical book. And quite often when I look up things through ASU libraries, the ASU library catalog, which is where I find books, I can find them through here. I'll find ebooks through here. So I'm going to research football injuries. And there's some stuff on microform, which we're probably not going to want to look at. There's a book in the science library called Prevention of Football Injuries. Now, realizing that that's very old, it's from 1971, and a lot has happened since then. So one of the things you want to make sure you look at with sources is age. So if your source, whatever kind it is too old, right, you need to have an explanation for this. For me, I might have decided to read this book on football injuries, but in my annotation, and it's from 1971, for my annotation, I might need to explain that this was a landmark text. And what I mean by that is it was like the first text published about this. So I wanted to read it and cite it and look at how this played out in history, okay? Now, if you want to, so that's how you're using that information. But if you decide you want to look at it and read it and treat it as new information, that would be incorrect. However, if you want to look at it as historical, that's fine. I tell students 5 to 10 years on sources, okay? Anything older than that, you'll probably need to explain why you're using such an old source. So another thing that I will allow, because of our truncated short 8-week or 6-week class, you can, in place of a book, use a documentary. So I know that there's a really popular documentary on football and head injuries. You guys might be able to find that on YouTube or somewhere else. But I'm not showing any ebooks here, but I am showing physical books. The way to check out a physical book is you will click on this. You can do one of two things. You can write down the call number and you can go to the science library and check it out. You can click the request button and they will deliver it to the library you requested them with your ASU Right sign in. Now, keep in mind, you have to go through the whole process. Keep in mind that it takes a couple of days for them to process. So you'll hit submit, and I'm not going to do that because I don't need this library book. You'll hit submit, and they'll send you an email in a couple of days when the book is available to you. Or after 3 days, for my account, I always go in after 3 days. So that's how we check out physical books. For ebooks, you can you can search the regular card catalog, or you can just go find ebooks. And you could search right here. So I might search, let's see, I might search for serial killers, ebooks about serial killers. And this is going to tell me all of the ebooks here. And these are texts that you can read online. When you're logged in through ASU. Okay, some of them allow you to download parts of the book. Some of them you have to read on the screen. So we have a couple of different ebook providers, and so that's something you want to be aware of. Okay, so that's books for you. The next thing on our list are newspaper/magazine articles. So there's one really good database through ASU, and then quite honestly, a lot of the newspaper and magazine stuff is online as well. So let's take a look at LexisNexis. This is where you find newspaper and magazine articles. And one of the good things about LexisNexis is that it'll search really local papers for you. So I'm going to search kids and football injuries, but what I'm going to do is it searches all this other stuff too. I'm going to make sure I go to advanced search and I only click newspapers. And I'm going to hit search. Now, LexisNexis is a big and tricky search engine sometimes. So you want to, most of the databases I'm talking about allows you to sort these. Realize that you don't want to go through 1,500 of these, but you might decide you want to filter some of these by, you want a newspaper. Maybe it's a certain newspaper. Maybe you want to go for, because USA Today, which is a really popular newspaper, the New York Times or something, right? We've got all of this here. So there's some good articles here. And there's only 15 to go through. So maybe you pick 2 of these 15. Or maybe, you decide you'll get one from USA Today, and then you'll get one from the New York Post, which is, again, another good, reputable newspaper. So that's good. There's 6 here. I always suggest to students to look through a couple of these first, right? Start reading them. Don't just pick the top 10, because that's not going to get you good information, okay? So yeah, obviously another good way to get newspaper-worthy stuff would be to look it up, okay? So the New York Times is a pretty popular newspaper, right? The challenge with looking it up just online is that the New York Times limits you to the number of articles you can read within a month. So once you reach that limit, you're kind of locked out. So if we search football injuries, there's a number of sources. So they have 49,000 results. Obviously, I need to change my search terms here, which is something that as you're using a library, you're going to want to think through a bunch, And now I only have 6,000 results. And maybe I want to make sure they're sorted by newest, because I want the newest ones, right? Concussions and an NFL paradox, that was just a couple of weeks ago. That might be helpful. So you're going to have to look through a couple of pages with these. Now, I want to show you the television news outlets aren't as good for some of your research here because they're very surface. So, for instance, the videos maybe are only like 2 or 3 minutes, or when there's a text article, they might only be a couple hundred words. Um, choose your information wisely here, especially these shorter form articles. Like 300 words on a topic when you're trying to understand the stakeholders or their positions or, a really key event is probably not in depth enough. So keep that in mind. So a lot of the print newspapers with long form articles, though, will be more helpful. So let's move on to scholarly journal articles. First, you're going to ask, what's a scholarly journal article? A scholarly journal article is a peer-reviewed, published article in a scholarly journal, okay? So these are, like, I'm your English professor. All of the different fields of study have their own number of journals that the academics, the professors, the PhDs publish their research in, okay? So there's probably about 40 or 50 journals that my field works in. So to find a scholarly journal article, I suggest a couple of different ways. I think the Library One Search is a really big database. It's a useful database sometimes, but it's not. But it sometimes gives you too many results because it searches everything that ASU libraries hold. So I'm going to search kids and football. And realize I have turned back 310,000 results. Now, on the side of most of your databases, you can decide to refine your search article. So you're looking for a scholarly journal article. You're going to click journal article. And now you only have 2,500 results. You can do it from different subject terms, right? So if you wanted a real sociological look or a psychological look, or maybe you want a medical look, you can do that too. The other thing you might want to do is limit in publication date, because maybe you only want to go back 4 or 5 years. So 2010 to present, there's 652. Still a lot. So again, there's some subject terms we could go through. We might go through, you might be really interested in brain, in the effects on a children's brain. Maybe you're really looking for an article that talks about that, right? There are 32. 32 is okay to look through, okay? With the scholarly journal articles, you can read abstracts, okay? And the abstracts will kind of tell you what those look like. So, I go through Get It at ASU. I go get article from one of these places. And then here's the HTML full text, right? And now, one of the things to note is I came across this scholarly journal article, and it's not that long, right? Like, it doesn't look that in-depth. For me as a researcher, it looks not like a really good article. So I'm going to go back to the drawing board. So that's ASU, the ASU Library One Search. One other database that I really, really like for this stuff is Academic Search Premier. You guys might have used it in high school and called it EBSCOhost. They're kind of the same thing. So I'm going to try again. Children and football injuries. And they gave me 106 results. So a lot more manageable. I can limit it to scholarly journal articles. I only want full text ones because you're not going to, you need to read these. Now I only have 47, and I can go to publication date within the last 5 years. And now I have 26. Again, definitely reasonable, okay? So I click on this, and I can download the PDF. So that's really another site I like for scholarly journal articles. Now, the other thing that you guys might decide to use, which I think is problematic because so I'm going to suggest not to use it, is Google Scholar. For one thing, it becomes really difficult to figure out what these publications are. For another thing, sometimes they link up with ASU Library, sometimes not. It's just a real kind of touch and go database for finding these scholarly journal articles, okay? Again, I suggest not using it, but if you have to, be very cautious and make sure you look. Like this one's journalsllw.com. So I'm going to look at it. Sometimes they have good stuff and sometimes they don't. A review and research journal. And a lot of times with Google Scholar too, they give you a lot of articles that you don't have access to. So sometimes it's really frustrating to look at an article and go, wow, this is the perfect one, and then realize you don't have access to. So my suggestion is start with Academic Search Premier. Go to Library One Search if you need to. That's fine too. And so the last kind of source that you need are 2 valid internet sources. Oh, let me go back to scholarly journal articles. I always have students who want to know if they can just find scholarly journal articles on the internet. If I just go to Google and I say scholarly journal articles on, let's do that. Right, all of this stuff is Google Scholar. Some of this stuff is other things. This one right here is interesting, right? Because right here you think you found the scholarly journal article. Yes, perfect, right? This actually happens to be something on a professor's homepage. When I look at the URL, I'm a good enough researcher to know. And this might not actually be published because the professor might not have gotten their research through. So looking on just the internet for scholarly journal articles poses the threat that you're not going to get this stuff through. So keep that in mind. So definitely don't look at just the internet for scholarly journal articles. But the last things that you need to look for on the internet, so these are just dedicated web pages, right? Now, you get 2 web pages. You get to look at 2 of them. Make sure you look at good ones. For me, I have this thing called the CRAP test. You evaluate a web source for currency, which is timeliness of the information, relevance, it's the importance of the information for your needs. So how good is this web source for you? The authority. Who publishes this? Are you trying to use this as like a bias source? Are you saying that, like if you, for instance, were doing something about gun control, which none of you are, and you were citing the NRA's website, right? They're a biased source. So you have to understand where that source comes from. Accuracy, right? The reliability of the information. Has it been reviewed or referred? Does this seem like it's supported by good evidence? If this is just someone's random personal blog, that you don't know who they are and they just put a bunch of shoddy information up there, that's probably not a valid website. And that's what I mean when I say valid, is does the website stand up to this test? And what's the purpose? Is this propaganda? Is this just good information out there? Does a person have a mission? It's good to know that. Sometimes, you get information with a biased purpose, and that's fine because, like I said, I want you guys to get different stakeholders in different positions. So if you were researching nuclear energy and you were looking at, the leading nuclear energy provider, or somebody who really, a company that really wants to get in that game, right? They have an agenda and they have a bias. And so citing their website is going to show, what their agenda and what their bias is. You just have to make sure that you're not citing it as these are the best facts out there. These are facts from someone else's position, okay? So that's what I mean by valid internet sources. Definitely make sure you look through those very deeply, okay? So that is my introduction to doing research at the library. Like I said, most of the things you're going to want to go through the databases through. The only two things I would suggest not going through the databases for are sometimes the newspaper articles, the New York Times, the LA Times. A lot of them post theirs and give you like 10 for free. So as long as you don't go over those 10, you're fine. And then also the valid internet sources, right? You're probably not going to find those on the library's page. But definitely the scholarly journal articles and the books or ebooks, you want to go through ASU's library. Or some sort of library for the book. Or maybe you own the book. That's totally fine. One final resource I'm going to give you for the library is the ASU library guide for your class. So a lot of different ways through this, but I'm going to go down to library guides. We are English 101, 102, 108, and they have a lot of help here. So videos and tutorials on a lot of this stuff. So, I've kind of covered the basics here, but there's a ton of stuff here. Maybe you're having problems with your keywords, watch that video. All of this stuff. Maybe you need more help with EBSCOhost, or maybe you really are committed to Google Scholar, right? Watch this video. So finding articles, research databases, they've got that stuff here. They give you some helpful hints on citing your sources. So we've got some stuff there too, but they've got some examples. They've got a citing sources library guide. The other thing with ASU's library is there's an Ask a Librarian function here, and then obviously every page I go to has Ask a Librarian. Using the chat function is extremely helpful because you can get a hold of a librarian 24/7, and they don't just deal with tech support. If you're having troubles finding information on your topic, or maybe you need a really specific article and you're having problems finding it, tell them you need help. Open up a chat box, very low stake here, and they can definitely help. So anything with the library. If you come to me and say, Paulette, I can't find any sources on my topic, I'm going to say, did you chat with a librarian? And if your response is no, then that should be your next step. I know some of you are doing topics that I even mentioned in my replies that, hey, this topic you might have a hard time finding resources on those, and if you do, you might want to change your topic. So keep that in mind. Not all of your topics are well represented at the library, but I think the majority of them are. Some of you guys just pick really interesting questions, but unfortunately very little library research on some of that stuff. Our library's big, so definitely take a look. But you also might have to switch your topic, Okay. All right. Thank you.